Breaking tonight, we are getting our first reports that some Americans are being evacuated from parts of Iraq as a frightening new terror group captures a series of Iraqi cities, vowing death to non-Muslims or anyone who stands in their way. This is amateur video said to be showing the militant group parading the captured Iraqi police forces through the streets. President Obama today met with his national security team to discuss the increasingly troubling situation. This group is bad. It's very bad. But one member of the Senate Armed Services Committee says that's the last group of people the president, the national security team I'm talking about now, should be asking for advice.
I say to the President of the United States, get a new national security team in place. You have been ill-served by the national security team and the decisions that you have in place now and the decisions that you made.
Mark Thiessen wrote most of President Bush's speeches on Iraq during his time at the White House. He's now a fellow with the American Enterprise Institute. Mark, do you agree with Senator McCain that the president's being ill-served?
Oh, it's a complete disaster. It's an unfolding disaster. And to put it in perspective, just think about the situation that Barack Obama inherited when he came into office. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is this group ISIS that is now on the march in Baghdad, going towards Baghdad, was defeated both militarily and ideologically. Militarily, they had been driven from all of their safe havens. Their leader, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, had been killed. They controlled no territory. They were on the run. Ideologically, the Iraqi people, the Sunni masses, had risen up against them and joined with America to drive them out instead of joining with al-Qaeda to drive America out. So they were defeated ideologically and militarily. And the situation was so good that the Obama administration was trying to take credit for it. Joe Biden went out and said Iraq is going to be a great achievement of the Obama administration. Instead, they squandered it all. And we now see al-Qaeda on the march. They went from having no safe havens to being on the verge of taking over a nation. That's the situation we're facing right now.
We have that soundbite from the Vice President. Let's take a listen.
I am very optimistic about Iraq. I think it's going to be one of the great achievements of this administration. You're going to see 90,000 American troops come marching home at the end of the summer. You're going to see a stable government in Iraq that is actually moving toward a representative government.
And you say today, instead of that success, that they are on the verge of starting the caliphate. That was bin Laden's vision.
Absolutely. They're 100 miles outside of Baghdad. They've taken over Mosul. They've taken over Tikrit. And what's so frustrating about this is, I mean, for one thing, those gains that are being squandered right now were paid for with the price of American blood. Americans died to liberate Iraq and drive al-Qaeda out of those cities. But beside the squandered sacrifice, they are going to use those gains to follow us here at home. I mean, they are not going to be satisfied with taking over Syria and Iraq. What they're in the process of doing right now is turning Iraq into what Afghanistan was in the 1990s, a safe haven from which to carry out attacks. And we know this because Ayman Zawahiri, in 2005, we intercepted a letter from Ayman Zawahiri to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq. And he said that they had 4 stages. First stage, drive the Americans out. Second stage, establish a caliphate in Baghdad. Third stage, use that as a base to attack other countries. Fourth stage, the clash with Israel. They've accomplished stage 1. They are in the process, 100 miles away from Baghdad, of nearly accomplishing stage 2. Stage 3 is to attack us. So this is what we're facing here. This is a very, very serious situation.
And if this group is so radical, this ISIS is so radical, even al-Qaeda has disowned it. Al-Qaeda doesn't want it. The people who killed 3,000 Americans on 9/11, they're trying to distance themselves from this group because they're too radical for them. You say it didn't have to be this way, that the president, in your view, made 2 critical mistakes. What were they?
Well, the 2 critical mistakes were one, withdrawing every single American troop out of Iraq against the advice of his military commanders, which had created a vacuum in Afghanistan, which allowed al-Qaeda to regroup and reconstitute itself.
In Iraq.
In Iraq, yes, al-Qaeda in Iraq to reconstitute itself. Second, he did nothing in Syria. Did nothing to help the moderate pro-Western rebels who were begging us for support, which created a vacuum in Syria that allowed the reconstituting al-Qaeda in Iraq, now ISIS, to move into Syria, create a safe haven there, draw recruits from around the world, train them, and now plan this march back into Iraq, where they are now taking over cities.
And now, And now what's really crazy is that now that we have decided to help some of the folks in Syria, not to mention the Iraqi forces, these bad guys with ISIS, this bad group, they're now using American Humvees. They've taken some of our weapons and equipment that we provided, and they're using them now against our allies, and I'm sure they'd love to use them against us as well. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Megan.